to everyone. For me, it's a great privilege to be here among all of you in this gateway to the Amazon region. When I was being asked for this opportunity, it was both a moment of immense pride, being representing Suriname, but also anxiousness. We're truly very nervous, as you can see. But also, I remember this feeling of anxiousness and fear of the unknown. When I was 18 years old, I left home from Suriname to study far away in Europe, to study university. That fear of the unknown, that leap of faith, was the same faith that my grandparents actually followed when they left their hometown in China, a journey of no return, to start a new life in Suriname, this rainforest nation where we speak Dutch, bordering Brazil, Guyana, and French Guyana. Suriname is a rainforest nation. We speak Dutch. We have 500,000 of inhabitants, but we are also very proud of being one of the countries with almost the highest rainforest cover in the world, 93%. We are also very famous because we recently discovered an immense offshore oil and gas discovery, just like Brazil and Guyana have in the same region, putting our economies at an important crossroads. Most of the population in Suriname, just like me, are descendants from immigrants who crossed the oceans. We crossed oceans from Africa, from India to Indonesia, and also from Europe. We are a small piece of the Amazon, but we are full of global perspectives. I remember when I grew up in Suriname, I first learned Chinese from my family, and then I picked up Dutch, the official language, and eventually English at school. My childhood in Suriname was one of the simple, fun things that I think normally we all do when there was no internet. We were chasing animals, we were fishing in the lakes and the rivers, and we were eating freshly slaughtered chickens for lunch. It's probably one of the reasons I prefer a vegetarian diet. It wasn't until much later when I grew up that I actually realized the privilege we had of growing up in a rainforest nation such as Suriname. When I was 16 years old, my parents took me on a family trip for the first time in the rainforest. We passed several hours on a dusty, unpaved road, then in a traditional canoe, and passing tremendous shades of green from the rainforest. And my first impression, that first time I actually stepped foot in the rainforest, was immense respect for anyone who could make a life in the rainforest without electricity, without running water, and without any roads. Inspired by that experience, I think I was 17. Almost a decade later, I was studying in the university in Suriname, and I made a decision to make a research trip back to Suriname. I went back to far southern Suriname in an indigenous community called Palimeu. And in that indigenous community, I was responsible for a project where we were looking for micro hydropower energy for the community. But my memories of that time in the region, in the Amazon forest, were actually of meeting the people who shared everything they had with me, from traditional homemade cassava bread to handmade crafts as farewell gifts. And when I went back in the same period, after just 1 month, I went back for my research, the people asked me just for one thing. They asked me for the memories in the form of printed pictures that I had taken on my first visit. And I can still remember the faces of the children when they saw themselves for the first time in print. It was a time without internet, without mobile phones, and apparently that village had neither television nor mirrors. Inspired by that trip again, I was finishing up my studies in the Netherlands. I decided I had to go back to Suriname. Really, the people in Palimeu had really touched my heart, and I had to go back. So I moved back again, packed my bags, moved back to Suriname, and I started my first job. My first job in Suriname was about designing and implementing potable water supply systems for communities, rural communities, surrounding the Amazon region. It was an experience where I not only learned more about the Amazon, but I actually learned more about using the what we call the local Creole language of Suriname. We do have a local Creole language. It's a mixture of Dutch, English, French, Portuguese, Spanish, all of the people who pass through Suriname. But that experience also opened up my eyes to the many challenges confronting these places. I remember when I was visiting a community and the river water was this milky coffee brown instead of the clear coke brown as a result of the gold mining activities upstream. The communities were unable to use the river water anymore, and I had to avoid eating fish because of the high mercury levels in the fish. Based on all those experience from all those projects, I actually, after 2 decades now of sustainable development, working in the region, working in the Amazon forest with the communities, I have actually focused on improving access to not only clean drinking water, but also to healthy food, to improving the livelihoods of the people who live in the Amazon and across the continent. I remember another story when I was working in the Amazon rainforest of Suriname. It's a community called Apura, where we supported the women to improve their ancestral technique of extracting oils from seeds, a vital livelihood that is passed down through generations. The project was looking actually not only to redefine their methods of extracting the oils, but also to market their products. But after a few years, the most, I would say, moment that I felt was when the women came back to me and they shared with me how they had successfully negotiated with the men to protect the trees that they so much needed for extracting the oils. It really showed me that traditional knowledge, empowerment of women, can be a source of agency. It can influence decision making. And over again, I've seen in the many projects that I've either visited, supported, collaborated with, that when we can empower women, we can actually provide those agents of change, the agents of conservation that we need. Because the men are usually lured away to work in traditional industries such as mining and logging with the promise of a big payday. But it's the women who are rooted by their ties to the community, who are rooted by their ties to the children and the elderly they care for. It is the women in the Suriname rainforest that are responsible for providing food to not only their families, but the whole community. Because it's the women who are responsible for the subsistence farming traditionally in Suriname. All of these stories of women and women empowerment take me back actually to one story where I've met this woman named Selinja. She was from a Maroon community in Suriname, one of those rainforest communities founded by the runaway slaves many, many centuries ago. I met Selinja on a remote island in the Amazon. She was just starting her ecotourism business. She had a very modest lodge with only 4 huts. Today, Selinja is the proud owner of a resort called Isadu, which means in the traditional Maroon language, you shall arrive or you're very welcome. The resort has over 40 huts, and it's one of the most well-known destinations, tourism destinations in Suriname. It's a story where I have seen empowerment of women who can then be the leaders of their community. They can show to the community that conservation pays. They can show to the community that preserving the environment, that protecting the environment is actually for the benefit to not only to sustain the community, but also to sustain that business of tourism. Celine Chung, who is actually now still running the business, for me, she's one of those examples where we can learn from as women. If we can empower just these women, how it would change the world and how it would change the community in the rainforest. As I reflect on my own Amazon experience, I've learned that each journey, whether it's across the oceans or deep into the rainforest, really shapes the way we become and the way what we want for in the future. What do we want for our children? And when I look back into all the work that I've done so far, the career that I've made, now working at the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, indeed, for me, protecting the environment, protecting the Amazon rainforest, is not just about protecting the trees. It is not just about protecting the macaws and the jaguars. It's about people. It's about these women who have used their ancestral knowledge to defy expectations, to influence local decision making. And it is about people like Celine, for me, a champion, who have shown, who have turned their vision into opportunity, and who have shown that there are different opportunities for communities to sustain their life. As I leave you all here today and tomorrow, I really would like to invite everyone, because it's a story about the forest and the Amazon and all these women in the forest, but it's also about all of us, all of you here. It's about me, it's about you. And let us all work together to find that story, your own Amazon story, like mine. Your own Amazon story, which for me is not only a story of protection, not only about protecting the environment, not only about protecting the Amazon region, but a story for me, it's about hope. It's about courage. It's about taking that leap and taking my suitcase. And it's about connection. And it's about that empowerment that we all need to sustain a more sustainable world. For me, I would invite all of you to think about that story of your own. How you can be an active player in this Amazon region, because the survival of the Amazon is not just a local issue, it's a global one, and its fate is irrevocably tied to our own. Muchas gracias. Muito obrigado.